It was a bitterly cold evening in late March when Emily Carter wrapped her scarf tightly around her neck and stepped out of Sunrise Diner, the small family-owned restaurant where she worked the evening shift. The streets of Chicago's uptown district were slick with melting snow, and the wind whipped through the high-rises like it had something to prove. Clutching her worn-out purse close to her chest, Emily sighed. Her feet ached from 10 hours on the floor, and the only thing she wanted now was to catch the last bus home at the bus stop. A handful of tired faces gathered, workers like her finishing long shifts, students lugging heavy backpacks, and elderly folks heading back to modest apartments. Emily checked her phone. 10:47 p.m., the last bus to her neighborhood, Lincoln Square, was due any minute. She reached into her purse and fished out the last few coins she had after paying her mom's medical bill earlier that day. Just enough for the ride home. As the bus screeched to a stop, Emily climbed aboard and handed her coins to the driver. She headed toward the back, sliding into a window seat and closing her eyes for just a moment. But then she heard it. "I'm sorry, sir. No money, no ride." The bus driver's voice was firm, even impatient. Emily opened her eyes. At the front of the bus stood a man in his late 20s, tall, with disheveled hair and a look of quiet desperation. His once expensive coat was torn at the sleeve. He clutched a phone that clearly had a shattered screen. "I was robbed," the man explained. "They took everything, my wallet, my phone, my car. I just need to get home." The driver shook his head. "I've heard that story before." The man's shoulders sagged, looked completely out of options. Without really thinking, Emily stood up. "I'll pay his fare," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She walked up and dropped her remaining coins into the fare box. The man turned, surprise flashing in his blue eyes. "You don't have to. I already did. You'd better take a seat before he changes his mind." As he sat down a few rows ahead, Emily wondered why she had done it. She didn't know this man, but something in his eyes told her he wasn't lying. Little did she know, this small act of kindness would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Emily tried to push the incident from her mind. She had given away her last few coins to help a stranger, something her mother would have called reckless. But Emily had always believed in helping where she could. Hey, life had been hard on her family, especially since her father passed away. If small acts of kindness didn't matter, what did? At Sunrise Diner, the usual crowd shuffled in for their morning coffee and scrambled eggs. Emily tied her apron and got to work, pouring steaming mugs for the regulars and scribbling down orders. But as the bell above the door jingled mid-morning, she looked up and froze. It was him, the man from the bus. He looked much better today, clean clothes, hair neatly brushed, but those same piercing blue eyes gave him away. He paused at the entrance, scanning the diner until his gaze met hers. For a second, he seemed unsure whether to approach, but then he squared his shoulders and walked to the counter. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm but slightly tentative. "I think I owe you a thank you." Emily wiped her hands on her apron, trying to mask her surprise. "You found your way home then?" "I did," he smiled. "Thanks to you, Alex." "Emily," she replied cautiously, wondering why he had sought her out. "I wanted to pay you back," Alex continued, reaching into his pocket. "I felt terrible just leaving things as they were." She shook her head firmly. "No need. Wasn't alone. You were in trouble. I helped. End of story." Alex smiled, looking both relieved and intrigued. "Still, could I at least buy you a coffee? Consider it a thank you and not a debt." Emily hesitated, but something about his earnest expression softened her resistance. "All right, one coffee. But I still think you're making too much of this." As they sat at a corner booth, Alex listened attentively while Emily spoke about her job, her studies, and her dream of opening a bakery someday. She noticed he didn't talk much about himself. She said he worked in hospitality, a vague answer she chose not to press. By the time Alex left, the clock above the counter read noon. As he walked out the door, he glanced back, their eyes meeting once more. Neither of them knew it yet, but this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning. Over the next few days, Alex became a regular at Sunrise Diner. Every morning, just after the breakfast rush, He'd take a seat at the counter where Emily worked. He never ordered anything fancy, just black coffee. And whatever the daily special was, but it wasn't the food that kept bringing him back. Emily noticed it too. At first, she thought it was just gratitude. So maybe he felt guilty or obligated after she'd helped him. But as the days passed, their conversations grew more natural, more personal. He asked about her classes, her baking experiments, even about her mother's health. And unlike most customers who half listened while scrolling through their phones, Alex gave her his full attention every time she spoke. One chilly Thursday morning, Emily brought him a slice of her homemade banana bread along with his coffee, testing new recipes. Alex asked, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Kind. Oof. If I ever open that bakery, banana bread might be the first thing on the menu, Emily replied. Brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, Alex took a bite and closed his eyes in exaggerated delight. If everything you bake tastes like this, that bakery's going to be famous. Emily laughed, though a blush crept up her cheeks. You're just saying that? I mean it, he insisted. In fact, I might be your first investor. She rolled her eyes. Now you're just teasing. But beneath the playful banter, a bond was forming. Emily looked forward to Alex's visits more than she cared to admit. For someone who had built walls around her heart after years of financial struggles and broken promises, this was new and terrifying. Still, something about Alex made her feel safe. What she didn't know was that Alex felt the same way. In his world, most people either wanted something from him or treated him like an accessory to his family's empire. Emily didn't even know who he really was. She simply saw him as a person and treated him that way, each morning. As the bell over the diner's door chimed his arrival, both of them felt a quiet anticipation neither dared to speak aloud. The simple moments, sharing coffee, trading stories, and the occasional teasing joke became their daily ritual. And though neither admitted it yet, the connection they were building was becoming the best part of both their days. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when the diner finally slowed down after the lunch rush. Most of the regulars had come and gone, and Emily was wiping down the counter when Alex arrived. He carried the same warm smile that had become so familiar, but today he seemed even more eager to talk. Rough morning? Emily asked, noticing the slight furrow in his brow. Not really, Alex replied. Just thinking, but enough. About me. How's school? Emily sighed, resting her hands on the counter. Tiring. Juggling night classes and double shifts isn't exactly easy, but I'm holding on. Alex leaned forward, still planning to open your own bakery. A spark lit in Emily's eyes. Always. That's the goal. I even have a name picked out. Oh. Alex smiled, intrigued. Let's hear it. La Dolce Vita, she said proudly. It means the sweet life in Italian, Alex chuckled. That's perfect. It sounds like a place people would travel miles for. I hope so, Emily replied softly. I've been working on the concept for years. I want it to be more than just a bakery. A community space. A place where people feel at home. Alex nodded, genuinely impressed. That's more than a dream. It's a vision. Emily smiled, but her expression quickly grew serious. Problem is, dreams cost money. And time. Two things I've never had enough of. My mom's medical bills eat up most of what I make, and the little I save always seems to vanish. Alex's gaze softened. He wanted to tell her that money wouldn't be an issue, not if she'd let him help. But he knew that wasn't what Emily wanted. She didn't need charity. She needed belief. Support. A partner who'd cheer her on without trying to take over, you know? Alex said carefully, the best businesses aren't built by people who had it easy. They're built by people like you people who keep going even when the odds are stacked against them. Emily met his eyes. For a moment, the usual walls she kept around herself felt a little lower. You really think so?
Oh.
She whispered. I know so, Alex replied. Neither of them noticed. The time passing. Their conversation had shifted from casual to something deeper. Shared understanding that neither money nor status could create. Emily's dream wasn't just about baking. It was about creating a new life. And Alex, though he hadn't said it yet, was already imagining himself as part of that life. As their morning chats became a cherished routine, Emily began to wonder about Alex's life outside the diner. He was kind, attentive, and surprisingly humble. But there were details that didn't quite add up. He always deflected questions about his work. When she asked where he lived, he'd vaguely say, downtown. And though his clothes were simple, they were undeniably high quality. One morning, Emily noticed the watch he wore sleek, elegant, and definitely expensive. But she didn't press. She had learned that people carried secrets for a reason. And after years of disappointment, she valued honesty over curiosity. If Alex wanted to share more, he would. What Emily didn't know was that every morning before coming to the diner, Alex sat in the back seat of a black SUV, reviewing emails from Hayes International, the billion-dollar hotel empire he was set to inherit. His father, Richard Hayes, expected him to take over within months. But Alex was stalling. For the first time in his life, he had found something outside of boardrooms, business deals, and high society parties. He had found real. Emily treated him like a person, not a potential CEO. She didn't know about his wealth, his family name, or the power he carried by birthright. And that anonymity felt liberating. He feared the moment she discovered the truth. Alex Hayes, he muttered to himself during one of those early morning rides. The name changes everything. His driver, a loyal man named Greg, glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Everything all right, sir? Alex nodded absently, just thinking about the diner girl. Alex smiled faintly. Yeah, Emily. Greg didn't say more. He'd driven the Hayes family for years and knew better than to pry. But even he could see that Emily had become something special to Alex, perhaps even more important than the family legacy itself. That afternoon, back at Sunrise Diner, Emily poured Alex's usual coffee and slid it across the counter. You always look deep in thought lately, she teased. Business troubles? Alex chuckled, trying to mask his anxiety. Something like that. Well, if you ever need advice, I'm a great listener. My rates are reasonable, she joked. Alex grinned, but the weight in his chest grew heavier. The closer they became, the more dangerous his secret felt, because he knew when the truth came out. It might not just break Emily's trust, it could break both of their hearts. As the days stretched into weeks, Emily and Alex's morning ritual at Sunrise Diner became more than just casual conversation. It became the anchor of their day. The comfort of familiarity. The quiet spark neither dared to fully acknowledge. Most customers came and went without a second glance, but Alex stayed. Rain or shine. Even on mornings when the sky over Chicago turned a cold, steel gray and the streets were nearly empty, he'd be there, coffee in hand, eyes searching for Emily the moment he walked through the door. And Emily. She found herself watching the clock. When the minute hand inched toward 9:15 a.m., her heart would race. She told herself it was just habit, just a friendly customer she'd grown used to. But deep down, she knew it was more. One chilly morning, as she refilled his coffee, Alex looked up with a softness in his eyes she hadn't seen before. You ever feel like some people cross your path for a reason? He asked. Emily paused, the coffee pot hovering midair. Sometimes. Why? Alex shrugged, his lips curving into a thoughtful smile. Because meeting you, it feels like something I wasn't supposed to miss. Her breath caught. She quickly looked away, focusing on a crumb on the counter that didn't really need cleaning. You say that like you've had a lot of things you've missed. Maybe I have, Alex admitted quietly. Neither spoke for a long moment. The diner buzzed around them, silverware clinking. The low murmur of other patrons, but in that space between them, time seemed to still. That afternoon, when Emily returned home, her mother Sarah noticed the faraway look in her daughter's eyes. You've been smiling to yourself all day, Sarah remarked. Emily shrugged, trying to downplay the warmth in her chest. Just a good day at work, her mother wasn't convinced. Or maybe a good customer. Emily laughed, but she couldn't deny it. Alex wasn't just a customer anymore. He'd become someone she trusted, someone who saw her for more than just a waitress trying to get by. He listened to her dreams. He believed in her, and though she tried to ignore it, every time their eyes met, something stirred, a feeling both thrilling and terrifying. Because falling for someone meant risk, and Emily Carter had spent her whole life avoiding risks that could break her heart. But for the first time, she wasn't sure if this was a risk she wanted to avoid. It was a Friday evening when everything changed. Emily had just finished wiping down the last table at Sunrise Diner when the TV mounted in the corner caught her attention. The local news was on, covering a charity gala downtown, a world far removed from her own. Wealthy guests in tuxedos and evening gowns were stepping out of luxury cars under the bright lights of the Chicago Art Museum. And arriving now, the reporter announced Alexander Hayes, heir to Hayes International, one of the country's largest hotel empires. Emily didn't think much of it until the camera zoomed in. Her heart stopped. There, stepping out of a sleek black car, was Alex. Her Alex. But this Alex wasn't in his usual flannel shirt and worn jeans. He wore a tailored black tuxedo. His hair was perfectly styled. Paparazzi flashes bounced off the polished surface of his expensive watch, the same one she had noticed weeks ago but brushed off. The anchor's voice continued. Sources say Mr. Hayes will soon take over as CEO of the family business following his father's retirement. Emily felt like the floor had vanished beneath her feet. She gripped the back of a chair, the wood cold and solid under her trembling fingers. Alex Hayes, heir to Hayes International. The man she'd shared coffee with every morning, the one who had listened to her hopes and fears, who had encouraged her dreams, wasn't just a humble hospitality worker. He was one of the wealthiest men in the country, and he had never told her. The bell above the diner door jingled as a late-night customer walked in, but Emily barely noticed. Her mind was racing, every conversation replaying in her head. The vague answers, the expensive watch, the reluctance to talk about work or where he lived. He hadn't lied outright, but he had hidden the truth. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Alex. Morning coffee tomorrow? Usual time. Emily stared at the message, her vision blurry with tears she hadn't realized were falling. She didn't reply. Instead, she grabbed her coat and stepped outside into the cold Chicago night, her breath forming small clouds in the frosty air. For the first time since they'd met, she didn't know if she could face him the next morning. Emily didn't go to the diner. She stayed home, curled up on the worn-out couch in the living room, while her mother, Sarah, quietly made tea in the kitchen. Emily's phone buzzed, over and over calls, texts, all from Alex, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she? Sweetheart, her mother finally said, sitting down beside her. Are you going to tell me what's wrong? Emily hesitated, then handed her mother the phone. On the screen was the news clip from the night before. Alex stepping out of the black car, reporters swarming him. The caption bold across the bottom. Alexander Hayes, heir to Hayes International. Sarah watched silently, then looked at her daughter. That's your Alex? Emily nodded, her throat tight. He never told me. All this time, he let me believe he was just some regular guy, someone like me. Sarah took a slow breath. Did he lie to you? No, but he hid the truth. Isn't that the same thing? Her mother shook her head gently. Not always. Sometimes people hide parts of themselves because they're afraid. Emily wiped at the tears that had started again. Afraid of what? Afraid of being seen only for what they have, not who they are. Emily wanted to believe that. She really did. But trust wasn't something she gave easily, not after years of disappointment, her father's broken promises, Eric's betrayal. And now Alex, someone she had allowed into her heart, had deceived her. In the one way that mattered most, honesty. That afternoon, unable to sit with her thoughts any longer, she grabbed her coat and headed downtown. Her steps felt heavier with each block. When she reached the towering glass building of Hayes International, the security guards eyed her warily. I'm here to see Alex Hayes, she said, her voice trembling. One guard raised an eyebrow. Do you have an appointment? No, but tell him Emily Carter is here. He'll see me. Minutes later, Alex appeared in the lobby. He looked different, polished, formal. like the man from the television. But when his eyes met hers, they softened with relief. "Emily, thank God. I've been trying to... Why didn't you tell me?" she interrupted, folding her arms tightly. "Did you think I'd treat you differently? That I'd want something from you?" Alex's face fell. "I was scared. I wanted you to know me, not the name." Emily's heart ached, but she shook her head. "But trust isn't something you hide. You've broken that." "I don't know if I can forgive you." Before he could answer, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing alone beneath the cold, sterile lights of the lobby, watching the one person who had ever seen him as more than just an heir walk out. That night, Alex didn't go home. He stood alone in his office on the 42nd floor of the Hayes International Building, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The lights of the city stretched endlessly, cold and glittering, but none of them brought him peace. All day he had replayed Emily's words in his mind. Trust isn't something you hide. She was right. He had built his entire life around avoiding judgment, around hiding who he really was behind a polished name and carefully curated image. But in trying to protect himself, he had become exactly like the people he despised, the ones who measured worth by status and wealth. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Legacy above all else. Alex Hayes, men don't chase emotions. They build empires. But what good was an empire if it cost him the only person who had ever seen him for who he truly was? The door creaked open. His father, Richard Hayes, stepped inside. Silver hair, sharp suit, and the same commanding presence that had built the Hayes fortune. "I hear you've been distracted," Richard said without preamble. Alex didn't turn from the window. "I've made a decision. About the girl? About everything?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "You're still taking over the company next quarter. The board expects it. I'm not." Silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Stepping down, Alex continued. "I'm leaving Hayes International." His father's jaw tightened. "Don't be ridiculous. This company is your life." "No, it's your life. You built it, not me." "And what will you do?" Richard's voice dripped with disdain. "Run off with a waitress? Go open a small-town cafe?" Alex finally turned, his gaze steady. "Maybe, but at least it will be honest, real, and it will be my choice." Richard stared at him for a long moment, then scoffed. "You'll regret this," maybe Alex replied. "But I'd rather regret leaving this company than regret losing Emily forever." For the first time in his life, Alex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The chains of expectation, duty, and fear shattered in that moment. That night, he drafted his resignation letter. The next morning, long before sunrise, he sent it to the board. Then he grabbed his keys and drove through the quiet streets toward Sunrise Diner, his heart racing, not with fear, but with hope. It was time to tell Emily the truth. But more importantly, it was time to show her he wasn't just words. He was action. The morning after sending his resignation, Alex stood outside Sunrise Diner well before opening time. The streets were quiet, bathed in the soft golden hues of dawn. In one hand, he held a small portfolio. In the other, a cup of Emily's favorite coffee, the way she always made it for him, strong. Yes. With a hint of caramel. When Emily arrived, surprise flashed across her face. "You're early," she said, arms folded protectively across her chest. Her guard was still up. The wounds of his dishonesty hadn't fully healed. "I needed to see you before the day got away from us," Alex replied softly. "Can we talk? Just for a few minutes." Emily hesitated. Then finally she nodded. They sat at the corner booth where so many of their conversations had begun. Alex placed the portfolio on the table between them. "I stepped down from Hayes International," he said without preamble. Emily blinked, not sure she'd heard him right. "You? What?" "I resigned. Yesterday," her breath caught. "Why? Would you do that?" "Because I didn't want a life that was decided for me. And because I realized I was living a lie. Not just with you, but with myself." Emily remained silent, processing his words. Alex opened the portfolio. Alex, floor plans, and a business proposal. I have a different plan now. She leaned in cautiously. There's a coastal town, Charleston, my parents used to take me there when I was a kid. It's quiet, beautiful, and full of charm. I bought an old property there, an abandoned inn. He pointed to a sketch of a renovated boutique hotel, cozy and elegant. I want to turn it into something new. A small hotel, personal, meaningful, something we can build together. Emily's eyes widened, and here, Alex continued, flipping to another page, is space for a bakery. Your bakery. La Dolce Vita. For a moment, all Emily could do was stare at the plans. Her dream, the one she had kept locked away in her heart, laid out before her, not as a fantasy, but as a real opportunity. I'm not asking you for an answer today, Alex added quickly. I just want you to know that this isn't charity. It is a partnership, a future we create together. Emily's throat tightened. The man who once hid his identity was now laying everything bare, his career, his wealth, and most importantly, his heart. Finally, she whispered, "You really believe in this?" "I believe in you," Alex said simply. And for the first time since the truth had shattered them, Emily felt the first fragile stirrings of trust returning. Weeks later, Emily found herself standing on the sandy grounds of the old Charleston, and the salty breeze from the Atlantic carried a scent of possibility. Beside her, Alex held a rolled-up set of blueprints under one arm. His other hand resting lightly on her back. Construction had begun. Workers bustled around the property, clearing debris and reinforcing the time-worn structure. For the first time, Emily's dream wasn't just a sketch in a portfolio. It was rising from the ground, but dreams, she was learning, came with a price. That afternoon, as they reviewed progress in a small makeshift office near the site, the contractor walked in with a grim expression. "We have a problem," he announced, setting a thick stack of papers on the table. "The building's foundation is worse than we thought. Water damage, termite infestations. If we don't reinforce it now, the entire structure will be unsafe." Emily felt her stomach tighten. "What does that mean? For the budget?" The contractor hesitated. "It doubles the cost. Maybe more." Alex's jaw clenched. He flipped through the report, scanning numbers that seemed to grow more impossible. With every page, "How long will the delay be?" "At least 3 months." Emily's heart sank. They had already stretched their savings thin. Every penny had been carefully calculated, from construction to marketing. There was no room for surprises, yet here they were. That night, sitting together on the front steps of the property, the weight of the news pressed down on them like the humid Charleston air. "I can ask for an extension on the financing," Alex offered quietly. "Or pull some emergency funds." Emily shook her head. "No, I won't let you drain everything you have. I'm not doing this for me. This is our project." She placed her hand over his. "Then we decide together. We delay the opening. We take the time to do it right." Alex studied her, pride flickering in his eyes. "Most people would panic. Right now. I've spent my whole life waiting for the right moment," Emily whispered. "If waiting a few more months means doing this properly, then that's what we'll do." They sat in silence, watching the sunset turn the sky into streaks of orange and pink. For the first time, Emily realized that despite the hurdles, she wasn't afraid. They were in this together, and some dreams were worth every delay. As the renovation delays stretched into weeks, Emily and Alex spent their days problem-solving, adjusting timelines and fine-tuning the hotel and bakery's vision. The challenges were exhausting, but together they kept moving forward. Then the past came knocking. It started with a phone call Emily didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail. A few hours later, another call, and then a text. "Emily, it's been a long time. Can we talk, Eric?" Her breath caught in her throat. Eric Dalton, and the man she had once trusted, the man who had promised to help her build a future, only to tear it apart with selfishness and betrayal. Years had passed. Since she'd walked away from that heartbreak, she didn't reply. She had nothing to say. But Eric wasn't finished. 2 days later, As Emily loaded supplies into the temporary kitchen space, she heard a voice that made her stomach twist. "Emily." Oh. She spun around. Eric stood in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, as if they were old friends reunited by chance. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, heart pounding. "I heard you were opening a bakery. Thought I'd stop by." "Talk. There's nothing to talk about." Eric smirked. "Come on, Em. You can't hold a grudge forever."
Ah.
"This isn't a grudge," she snapped. "It's boundaries. Stay out of my life." Before he could respond, another figure appeared, Alex. He took one look at Eric and stepped protectively to Emily's side. "Is there a problem here?" Eric's confident smirk faltered slightly. "And you are." "I'm the man who's standing beside Emily now," Alex said firmly. "And if you're here to stir up trouble, I suggest you leave." Eric's eyes narrowed. "Wow, upgraded, huh?" "Eric," Emily warned. "Walk away." For a moment, it seemed like Eric might argue, but then he shrugged, putting on that old insincere grin. "Fine. Just thought I'd offer my support. Good luck with your little bakery." He turned and walked out. Emily exhaled shakily. Alex placed a steady hand on her back. "You okay?" Nodded, though her heart was racing. "I thought he was gone for good." "You've built a new life," Alex said gently. "Don't let him pull you back into the old one." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his quiet certainty. "I won't." But deep down, she knew this wouldn't be the last they'd hear from Eric. The past had a way of testing the future, and their new beginning was about to face its toughest test yet. The days that followed were tense. Though Eric had left, his shadow lingered. Rumors started swirling through the small Charleston community. Some whispered that Emily's past relationship was causing drama, saying a former waitress and a runaway hotel heir had no business trying to rebuild an old inn. Suppliers began hesitating. A few investors who had once shown interest backed away. Emily felt the weight pressing on her shoulders. She could handle people doubting her. She had done that her entire life. But now, it wasn't just about her. It was about Alex, the staff they had hired, and the dream they had promised to deliver. One evening, after another exhausting meeting, where the contractor announced more delays, Emily slumped into a chair in the temporary office, rubbing her temples. "I thought, once we got past the foundation problems, things would finally ease up," she whispered. Alex sat beside her, taking her hand. "They will. This isn't forever." She shook her head. "We've already delayed the opening twice. We postpone again, we'll lose even more support." Alex was silent for a moment. "We have two choices. Cut corners to meet the deadline, or delay again, and do this the way we always intended." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt and frustration. "If we delay, we risk losing everything. If we rush it, we risk losing what we believe in," Alex replied gently.
Really?
"You've always said this bakery was about more than money. It's about creating a space where people feel valued, safe, inspired." She nodded slowly. "But what if people think we've failed before we've even started?" "Then let them think what they want," Alex said. His voice was calm but firm. "Let them doubt us. We'll prove them wrong, not with words, but with the place we build." Emily leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "You still believe in us, even after all this?" "I believe in you," he corrected, "and I believe in us." The decision was made. That night, they called the contractor and agreed to another delay. They sent out a statement to their suppliers and future guests, explaining the reasons honestly and transparently. Some withdrew their support. Others respected their integrity and chose to stay. As the sun set behind the skeletal frame of the old inn, now slowly transforming into something new, Emily felt a quiet peace settle over her. They were still standing, and they were standing together. The day finally arrived. After months of setbacks, doubts, and sleepless nights, the Harborview Inn and La Dolce Vita Bakery opened their doors. The salty breeze from Charleston's waterfront carried the scent of fresh paint, blooming jasmine, and Emily's pastries, which had been baking since sunrise. Emily stood behind the bakery counter, smoothing the front of her apron, though her hands trembled slightly. Outside, a line of curious locals and tourists stretched down the sidewalk. "I can't believe this is real," she whispered. Alex, standing beside her, squeezed her hand. "It's not just real. It's happening because of you." The first customers entered, and within minutes, the cozy space filled with conversation, clinking of coffee cups, and the warm hum of life returning to the once abandoned inn. Emily watched as guests bit into her lemon tart and smiled with delight. A young couple complimented the coffee. An elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades wiped away tears and whispered, "It feels like home." By noon, the bakery had sold out of 2 signature pastries. Guests began exploring the hotel's rooms, the rooftop garden, and the airy common spaces Emily and Alex had designed together. The doubts and fears of the past year melted away like morning mist. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold, Alex led Emily to the rooftop garden. Tiny string lights cast a soft glow over the flowers and trellises. "Remember when we first talked about this?" Alex asked, quietly, back at the diner. "I remember thinking it was impossible," Emily said, smiling. "And now," he asked, "now I know nothing's impossible if you build it with the right person." Alex took a deep breath and reached into his pocket. Emily froze. He lowered himself to one knee and opened a small velvet box, revealing a delicate ring with a single diamond that sparkled in the fading light. "Emily Carter," he said, voice steady, despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "From the moment you gave away your last coins to help a stranger, you changed my life. You showed me that love, trust, and dreams are worth more than anything money can buy. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Cheers erupted from the guests below who had gathered unknowingly. And as Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, he pulled her into a kiss. Their story built not on wealth or status, but on love, honesty, and resilience had just begun. The wedding took place 3 months later, beneath the swaying palms along Charleston's quiet shoreline. The ceremony was simple, intimate, and perfect, just as Emily had always imagined. Friends, family, and the loyal staff who had helped make Harborview Inn and La Dolce Vita a reality gathered beneath an elegant white arch draped with soft linen. In fresh jasmine, the Atlantic waves rolled gently against the shore, their rhythm as timeless as the vows about to be spoken. Emily wore a flowing ivory dress that fluttered in the breeze. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, freshly picked from the rooftop garden they had designed together, as she walked down the sandy aisle. Her eyes locked with Alex's. He stood beneath the arch, wearing a light gray suit, his usual calm. Confidence softened by the emotion shining in his eyes. When she reached him, he took her hands in his. The minister smiled and began the ceremony. "Today we celebrate not just a marriage, but a partnership built on trust, perseverance, and love that overcame every obstacle." Alex spoke his vows first. His voice was steady, though his eyes glistened. "Emily, you taught me that real wealth comes not from what we inherit, but what we create together. You showed me the power of resilience, of kindness, and of believing even when the world doubts. I promise to stand beside you not just in moments of joy, but through every challenge, every delay, and every new dream we chase." Tears filled Emily's eyes. When it was her turn, she drew a deep breath. "Alex, you showed me that it's okay to trust again, that love can be honest and brave. I promise to never stop dreaming with you, to face every storm by your side, and to always remember the day a simple cup of coffee became the start of our forever." The minister smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." As the guests applauded, Alex cupped Emily's face in his hands and kissed her, sealing not just their vows, but their journey from strangers to partners, from risk-takers to dream-makers. That evening, under the string lights of the rooftop garden where he had proposed, they danced to the soft strum of an acoustic guitar. The guests toasted with coffee and pastries from La Dolce Vita, sweet reminder of how their story had begun. and as the stars blinked above the Charleston sky, Emily and Alex knew this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything they had. It's built together and everything yet to come.